We begin with a grisly discovery on what should have been her wedding day. Police say they found what is most likely the body of 24-year-old grad student Annie Lay inside the wall of a lab at Yale University.
Shortly after police made the announcement, Yale's president offered his condolences.
Hearts go out to the family of Annie Lee, to her fiance.
It's really depressing.
I know.
And she did nothing wrong except go to work.
The discovery came on the same day Lay had been scheduled to be married on Long Island, New York, to her college sweetheart, Jonathan Wadowski.
Records reportedly show Annie Lay entered a small room off of a lab in the basement and then never used her card again. The Hartford Courant is reporting that Raymond Clark swiped his way into that room too. And Raymond Clark's co-workers have now begun to come forward, telling police Clark was a control freak who viewed the lab and the mice as his territory.
The guy's just crazy. He's like, I don't know what's wrong with him, and I don't know if he killed the girl. I just know that he has the mind like that, like he's crazy. I know he was weird. He would never look you in your eyes.
I thought he was a nice guy. I mean, besides the one time that he's like, can you guys get the trash out of the hallway?
Before the sun came up this morning, unmarked cars had surrounded this Motel 8 in Cromwell, Connecticut. They knew the arrest warrant was coming for 24-year-old Raymond Clark III.
Clark was picked up at a motel where he spent his last night before his arrest dining on pizza. Appearing disheveled and disillusioned, Raymond Clark entered court yesterday.
Hey, big man. Enjoy jail.
And then, just 2 hours after Clark's arrest...
All right, this is number 15, Raymond Clark.
Mr. Clark has been a lab technician at Yale since December 2004. His supervisor reports that nothing in the history of his employment here gave any indication that his involvement in such a crime might be possible.
Many are asking what motive could Raymond Clark possibly have.
One is that they had some sort of a relationship, and it deteriorated at some point. He became obsessed and ended up killing her, unfortunately. The second version would be that there is no relationship between the two of them. The only relationship is what is in his mind.
As for motive, some believe Clark may have gotten into a dispute with Lay over laboratory procedures.
Did he make a complaint about her treatment of animals?
I'm not going to talk about any of that.
As an animal technician, Clark cleaned the cages and fed the animals that Lay and other researchers used.
Reports this morning that he may have had help hiding the body.
They definitely felt that they were in charge of enforcing those rules.
As more evidence becomes unsealed in this case, more about the alleged killer's motive will become known.
Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel.
Happy HALLOWEIRD. Welcome. I'm trying something new. Obviously, I want to talk about weird, creepy stuff like I usually do, but now it's Halloween, so it's HALLOWEIRD, and there is no conspiracy, so there is no tinfoil hat. It's solved. So that's fun. I want to do something solved. Let's get weird. I want to talk about Raymond Clark III. Raymond did a very bad thing, and there were many red flags way before Ray did what he did to Annie Lay. But before I get into Ray and his background, hi guys, I got another sponsor. This video is sponsored by Scentbird. Scentbird is an amazing subscription service that allows you to try luxury perfumes for very cheap. I'm talking $16 a month, and if you use my code, $11. The cool thing about it is you get a pretty generous amount. First of all, it's a spray bottle, which I love way more than a roller. Second of all, you get a decent amount, a 30-day supply. I love trying perfume samples. Look at the size difference between big difference. They have so many designer brands, Gucci, Prada, Louis, Mui, Boui, all of them. They sent me this month Gucci, Bloom, Catherine Malandrino Transcendent. I loved it. If you like fresh, fruity, but more fancy, like, you know, those body splashes that they smell kind of immature, but I like the smell. This is like that, but fancier. This is okay, I don't know how to say this. It's French. I'm going to try. Le Jardin Le Tuverel. French. It is so long lasting. I tried this one out. It smells like pure flower. I don't know how to explain it. You might like it, you might not. I don't know. For me, I love it. So essentially, Scentbird is a fragrance subscription service that allows you to choose fragrance from over 600 brands, and it's very flexible. You could skip a month with no penalties. Link in description and in the pinned comment. Check it out below. Thank you so much for sitting through that, and thank you to Scentbird for sponsoring this video. I want to talk about what happened to Annie. Ray and Annie worked together in the same lab at Yale University, which is prestigious. Annie was a doctoral student at the Yale School of Medicine's Department of Pharmacology. She was from San Jose, California, and had a very bright future ahead of her. She was valedictorian of her high school. She was voted most likely to be the next Einstein in the senior superlatives. I got class clown in mind, but you know what? Nobody cares. After finishing undergrad, she got accepted into Yale's graduate program. And she was doing important work. She was researching and conducting important experiments about treatments for cancer and diabetes. And her fiance was Jonathan Wadowski. He was a graduate student in applied physics and mathematics at Columbia University. So a smart couple. The irony here is that Annie had actually written a paper, or was it an article? It was an article. And she wrote it for Yale's Medical School's B magazine, and the article she wrote was titled Crime and Safety in New Haven, which is so ironic because she wrote this months before that would be very relevant. Crime and safety in New Haven. Remember her fiance, Jonathan? Well, they were about to get married literally a week from when she went missing, which is why at first people thought it may have been like a runaway bride situation. But as time went on and information leaked, we realized this was way worse. So here's how the whole thing started. On September 8th, 2009, it started like any other day in Annie's life. She woke up and left her apartment. She took Yale Transit to the Sterling Hall of Medicine on the Yale campus. She had left her purse, her cell phone, her credit cards, and cash at her office in Sterling Hall, which may indicate that she was planning to leave and come right back. Then at 10 a.m., she walked from Sterling Hall to another campus building at 10 Amistad Street, where her research lab was. A little bit after 10, she was captured entering the building by the security cameras, and then she swiped her access card. She got in. That was the last time Annie was ever seen. She was never seen leaving the building after that. At 9 p.m. that night, her roommate is worried sick. First of all, Annie didn't call her all that day, which is strange. Usually she would get a call from Annie at some point during the day. Then adding to that, she didn't show up. It's 9 o'clock. She should have been home by now. So her roommate's freaking out. Her roommate is called Natalie Powers. So she calls the cops and she reports Annie missing. They checked out the trash, the local dump, the landfill, the incinerator. So when police checked the surveillance footage, they realized that she had gone into the building, and there's record of that, but that she never exited the building. So once they found that out, they shut down the whole building and they were investigating everything. And it was during this investigation, 4 days after Annie went missing, police ended up finding bloody items in the ceiling of the same building that she was last seen entering. So at that point, they were like, okay, this is probably a crime scene. And then literally the next day, September 13th, they found Annie. She was in the wall of the lab in Yale. Now, the tragic thing here is that September 13th is actually Annie's wedding day. Like the day she was supposed to get married, they found her dead body. And the way they found it was awful. She was in the wall of the basement lab where she was last seen entering. Then there were other items around her as well that seemed to be connected to the person who did this to her. Her like underwear was removed, like her bra was pulled up, her underwear was pulled down. They found semen in her body. Her jaw was broken. She had been strangled. Her collarbone was broken. The whole thing was horrific. And then once they conducted the autopsy, they said that her cause of death was due to traumatic asphyxia due to neck compression. Basically, she was strangled, and they said that this could be consistent with a chokehold or some other type of thing, like maybe using a pipe or an object, or even it could just be your hands. Once they found her in the building in an area that could only be accessed by someone with a Yale key card. And this is like state of the art. The Yale research labs are super high tech, very high security. Really, nobody could have gone in there unless they worked at the school or were a student at the school. So once they found this out, they started going, checking the cameras, the exits, the key card swipes, trying to figure out who could have done this. Now keep in mind, the area where Annie's body was found was the animal research lab in the basement. This was where they kept mice that were used for lab experiments. And this is when Raymond Clark III comes into the picture. Now, Raymond Clark III was an animal tech at the lab, and he also worked as a custodian. To understand what happened to Annie, you need to understand who Ray was. And the thing with Ray is that he was different to different people. Meaning, some people think that he was this amazing guy. He was an athlete. He played baseball in high school, very friendly, outgoing. Everybody liked him. There was that side of Ray.
He was just the kind of guy who would say hi to everybody, just a genuinely nice person. I never saw anything unusual, weird, angry, nothing. I didn't see.
And then there was the other side of Ray, the side that people said was controlling. As a matter of fact, they called him a control freak.
We were out in the hallway, and my dad was like, we had our stuff in the hallway or whatever, and he walked by, he's like, what is this shit doing in my way? He says, I want it out by tomorrow. My dad said, hold up, bro, you got a problem? You come to me, don't talk to my son like that. And the guy's just crazy. He's like, I don't know what's wrong with him, and I don't know if he killed the girl. I just know that he has the mind like that, like he's crazy. He was weird. He would never look you in your eyes. He would say hi. He would walk by, raise his hand. That's it.
I thought he was a nice guy. Besides the one time that he's like, can you guys get the trash out of the hallway?
And then there was his ex-girlfriend in high school. And now these are the red flags that I was talking about.
But one person's memories of Clark aren't so fond. His high school girlfriend.
About 3 months into everything, he started to get a little controlling in the fact where it was what I could and couldn't wear and where I couldn't go and how I should speak. He would get very angry, you know, often. He did get physical. I'm sorry, I don't want to talk about that.
There are certain things the police
exactly
have requested you not to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, you know, he get this little look in his eye, and sometimes it was better just to do what he said, just to avoid the fight. I wanted out.
And when you told him this, what?
He didn't want it to be over. An incident occurred, and I took the steps that I thought would be the best way to handle it. I went through the school, and I went through the police.
Wait a minute. When you say he didn't want
he didn't want to break up.
What did he do?
I can't comment on that.
The incident was his ex-girlfriend who was trying to break up with him. That happened in 2003. And in 2004, he started working at Yale as a lab tech. Quote, Colleen Murphy, who saw Ray at the Yale lab, told the Yale Daily News, when I would see him walking through the halls, he would look at the ground, wouldn't really look at anyone. Another fellow researcher who was not named told the New York Times that Clark's work habits were, quote, very officious and very demanding. Ray worked at the lab with his fiance and his brother-in-law, and they were all lab techs that worked with the animals. And that's when his fiance comes into play, Jennifer Hromadka. We'll call her Jennifer, okay? I'm not going to try to say her last name. The thing with Jennifer is that people who were around them as a couple, like neighbors and stuff, they said that Ray was extremely controlling of Jennifer. Quote, Anne-Marie Goodwin, a woman who was Clark's neighbor in Branford, tells ABC's Good Morning America that Clark was, quote, very controlling of his girlfriend. He wouldn't let her talk to me or anything. And this is very similar to what his high school girlfriend said about him. But Jennifer is extremely loyal to Ray. We'll get into how loyal and all that, but at the time that this happened, she stood by him. His girlfriend stood by him so much that when all these rumors were swirling that Ray had something to do with it, she wrote on MySpace. Remember MySpace? Yeah. She wrote, quote, "My boyfriend Ray, if you don't know him, has no interest in any of the other girls at YARC as anything more than friends. He's a bit naive, but he's a good guy." And she said, "Who are you to judge the life I live? I know I'm not perfect and I don't live to be, but before you start pointing fingers, make sure your hands are clean." Exclamation point, exclamation point. So remember how Ray and his fiancee Jennifer and his brother-in-law are all lab techs, animal lab techs, should I say, at this lab in Yale, at Yale, whatever, I can't speak. They would cross paths and interact with the researchers, the students, such as Annie. And the very cages and mice and animals that Annie would be doing research and experiments on, those same cages and animals would be cleaned and handled and cared for by the animal lab techs.
We're known for reprimanding the investigators. If you weren't wearing shoe covers in the hallway, they would tell you to put on shoe covers or sometimes yell at the researchers.
So that was their relationship in this lab. The first thing police did was conduct a bunch of interviews with all the people that were in the lab and students and coworkers that would have had contact with Annie. So when they interviewed Ray, they got suspicious because, first of all, they asked him to take a polygraph. He said okay, and then he failed it. As we know, that's not admissible in court, so it's not like they can arrest him, but they were like, suspicious. The next thing that happened was, as they were interviewing him, they noticed that he had scratches on his face, scratches on his arm. And so they asked him about it, and he said, "Oh, it's from my cat." Okay, suspicious, but still can't arrest him or do anything about it. Then on September 10th, Ray approaches police. He goes to the Yale police officer. Her name is Jennifer Garcia. And he tells her that he saw Annie leaving the building at 12:45 p.m., 15 minutes before he left the building and before a fire alarm went off in the building. And the alarm was supposedly activated by steam from an autoclave used to sterilize the lab equipment. Now, keep in mind, police have been monitoring the surveillance. Like, they know that there's no evidence of her leaving. There are cameras that were working at every exit and entry point. And so if she was to leave, they would have seen it on the camera. So the police know that that's kind of impossible. So that's another red flag. So then police are like, "Hey, Ray, how well do you know Annie? Like, what's your relationship with Annie?" And he says, "I met her at the beginning of 2009. Remember, this is September 2009. So he's like, "I've only known her for several months." And he says that they've never socialized. They don't interact other than at work, and they only interact as co-workers. So then police are like, "Okay, well, tell us what happened the day she disappeared. Like, walk us through your day." And he says, "I reported to work at 7 a.m. And then he says that about 10:30 a.m. he saw Annie dressed in a brown skirt and yellow lab coat doing work in the lab. Between 12:30 and 12:45 that afternoon, he says that he saw her leaving the lab carrying a notebook and 2 bags of mouse food. Now remember, the last time anyone saw Annie was a little after 10 a.m. when she walked into the lab. He's now saying he saw her at 10:30 working and then again at 12:45 leaving. Something else also happened on September 10th, which is the day that Ray tells them he saw her and all that. Rachel Roth, who was another student that was also working with Annie, went to one of the Yale officers, Officer Wood, and she shows Officer Wood these wipes, hygienic wipes. The brand is Wipe All, that look like they have blood spatter on them, and they're on a steel push cart in the room, the lab G13, which is a lab that Annie's known to work in. And she's like, "Look, it looks like there's blood on here." Once she tells Officer Wood that, Officer Wood is like, okay, she kind of like tries to secure the scene and waits for the FBI agents to come. And while she's sitting there in G13, who walks in? Ray. Quote, "Wood watched Clark come in and leave G13 several times. He walked over to the pushcart and shifted the box of wipes from one side of the cart to the other, turning it so the blood spatter faced away from Wood, then leaned on the cart as he made small talk with the officer. Later that day, Clark began scrubbing a drain in G13, even though Wood said the drain did not appear to need cleaning. According to the affidavit, it says, the action of Clark, as observed by Officer Wood, appeared to be a deliberate attempt by Clark to block her view of the box in question. He then continued to work in the lab. He then scrubbed the floor drain with steel wool and cleaning solutions, even though there was nothing there to be cleaned. That wasn't the only cleaning that he did. He continued to clean in front of them areas that didn't seem like they needed cleaning. Quote, Clark was also seen by Yale Police Sergeant J. Jones scrubbing the floor under a sink near the drain. Jones said he thought it was unusual because he said the floor did not need to be cleaned. Jones also said he saw Clark, also known as Ray, also known as the lab tech from hell, like bump into the cart, try to like shift the wipes and shift something, but they said that it didn't end up disturbing any of the evidence, but they think this is another attempt to try to like conceal and hide the evidence from police. Now keep in mind, as all this is happening, police are telling the public like, we don't know if a crime really happened. We're not suspecting foul play just yet. All options are on the table. And then September 12th rolls around and that all changes. Why? Because police end up finding bloody evidence. They found a blood-stained rubber glove and a sock, as well as blood-covered work boots labeled Ray-C. As we know, what's Raymond's full name? Raymond Clark III. They also found a blue hospital scrub, just like the one that he's seen wearing in the video surveillance, and other items. Now, at this point, police were like, this is a crime scene. And so they started treating it as a crime scene. And then the next day, they find Annie. What happened was an investigator was in the lower level of the lab building, and they noticed a foul odor, quote, similar to that of a decomposing body in the area where the lockers were. They immediately called to have cadaver dogs brought to the scene. They brought the dogs to the scene. They say that the dogs immediately found the location where Annie's body was. They ended up finding her behind a wall covered with insulation, and that's when they found her and those incriminating pieces of evidence. The way they found her was described as, quote, concealed in a wall behind the toilet in a mechanical chase, a compartment in the wall that runs from the basement to the roof. She was wearing surgical gloves with her left thumb exposed, with several items surrounding her body in the wall cavity. They found a stained lab coat and a sock that matched the blood-stained sock found the day before. Underneath her body, they found a bloody green ink pen. Blood was smeared behind the wall and insulation was used to attempt to conceal the body. And that's when they found out about Ray's keycard activity. Not only was he the last one going into the same area that Annie was last seen going into, but his activity was unusual when you compared it to all the other days that he was in the lab using the card, because he went into rooms that he would never go into, and he went there so many times. Like they showed that for like a week before this thing happened, he had only gone 11 times into several rooms, but then the day it happened, it was like 55 swipes, all in the rooms where they were finding evidence. And so at this point, it was like, dude, Ray did it. In addition to his suspicious swipes was the green pen. Remember that blood-soaked green pen that was found underneath Annie's body? Well, when Ray came in that day and signed in, he signed with a green pen, and it had his initials, RC. So it was looking more and more like Ray did it, but of course they needed DNA to confirm it for sure. But before they could get that DNA, they found out that there was another connection between Ray and Annie. Ray had messaged Annie.
And sources tell us there were also emails or text messages between Clark and Lay. That Clark at one point had complained to Lay about the condition of the mice cages in the lab, that they'd been left dirty. It was his job as technician to clean them. In those messages, he suggested the two of them meet.
We don't know if they actually met up, but we do know that he was mad at her for the dirty mouse cages. And remember, where was she last seen? Down where the mice cages are. So at this point, police began to quietly surveil Ray. They were watching him as they were trying to obtain a warrant to get his DNA to see if it matched. Then they finally get the warrant to get Ray's DNA. They collect his DNA on September 16th. The next day, on September 17th, they arrest Ray. Ray was at a Super 8 motel. He had spent the night there with his dad. They found him there. They arrested him. They say he didn't put up a fight.
There they found Raymond Clark in a white shirt, tan pants. ABC News has learned authorities have been closely following Clark for days.
He looked totally terrified. People were yelling at him.
Hey, big man. Enjoy jail.
Remember that sock that they found, the bloody sock? The blood on that sock was a mixture of Annie's DNA and Ray's DNA. When I was looking into this, I was like, whoa, they were able to test the DNA in one day. And then I found an article where it said a police lab expedited tests on Clark's DNA. University of Connecticut genetics professor Linda Strasberg, I'm sorry, Linda, says testing can be done in days if a case gets top priority. Side note, there was a lot of hubbub at the time, similar to the whole thing with Gabby Petito, where people are like, why is this case getting more attention than others? This happened back then too, where they were like, oh, it's because she's from Yale and Ivy League. And then they were mentioning other cases of another college that wasn't prestigious, where someone had died or gone missing and nobody was paying attention. And the media was all about this because the Yale and, the whole thing. So I just thought that was interesting to note that, this is like a common thing where, unfortunately, when things are more interesting to people, they cover that, even though really everyone should get equal coverage. But anyway, moving on, back to the case. When they arrested him, they set his bail at $3 million.
24-year-old Raymond Clark III woke up this morning in a high-security prison. He was arrested yesterday in the death of 24-year-old Annie Lay. And we were also told that he is not cooperating with authorities, invoking his Fifth Amendment rights.
You understood those rights. Yes.
Clark barely uttered a word. His newly appointed attorneys requested that bail be reduced. The judge disagreed, describing the case as very serious. He remanded Clark to prison and kept the bail at $3 million.
And that is so ordered.
Interestingly enough, when police were doing their press conference, they made a point to say that this crime was workplace violence and not any other crime.
This is not about urban crime. It's not about university crime. It's not about domestic crime, but an issue of workplace violence.
They also said that there were no other suspects, although according to news reports at the time, there were lots of rumors swirling and sources saying that there was someone else that may have helped Ray.
Reports this morning that he may have had help hiding the body.
Could his fiancée Jennifer be involved, or his brother-in-law? Did somebody help him? And those kind of rumors were going, but officially he did this alone and there were no other suspects. Now, due to the overwhelming evidence, the DNA evidence, the boots that had his name on it, the fact that he was seen on the camera swiping and all that, it was just overwhelming evidence. At first, Ray had the nerve to be like, not guilty. He pled not guilty, but then that changed and he ended up pleading guilty to try to get a lesser charge. They ended up charging him with murder and SA. And he was sentenced to 44 years, which means that he will be incarcerated until September 2053. And I didn't know this, but I found out that in Connecticut, if you're serving time for murder, there's no parole. So he's not going to get out until 2053, which means he would be 70 years old at that time. As for his girlfriend, Jennifer, remember Jennifer, the one that neighbors said he was mistreating and controlling and wouldn't let her talk to anyone, the one that stood up for him, the one that people were suspecting may have helped him. Well, she stood by him, maybe even till now. It says here that she continued to visit him in prison every few days. Now, these are according to records that were obtained by the Associated Press using FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, one of my favorite acts. They found out that she visited him every few days. She visited him 4 times in the first half of January and 9 times each in December and November. She visited him a year after, on September 8th, the day the incident happened. So like the anniversary of when he killed Annie, she went to visit him. From her Instagram, I was able to find a photograph that to me proves that she still works for the Yale lab, at least as of August of this year, which is when that was posted. And it's like a certificate from 2021 that's like acknowledging that she worked with them for 15 years and they're giving her this award and everything like that. So she's still working there. She hasn't been charged. I don't know if she's still going to visit Ray or still with Ray. During the sentencing, it seemed like Ray had some remorse, although he never gave a motive, which is the thing that frustrates a lot of people. He came out and he said, quote, "I stand here today taking full responsibility for my actions." They said that he was tearing up and struggling during this. He said, "I'm truly, truly sorry for taking Annie's life." Annie's family were distraught. The mother, oh my God, she was like, "You took my only daughter. Her future is gone. You stole her from me." They couldn't get closure. They couldn't get over it. I mean, how can you blame them? It was just so tragic. The only mystery in this case is why, right? Is it the mice? There were people talking about, could this be a hate crime? And then they found out that he was part of the Asian Association in high school.
A member of the Asian Awareness Club. Classmates say he was quiet, friendly, popular.
And they were like, maybe it's not a hate crime. I don't know. Other people were speculating if maybe he had like made an advance towards her and she rejected him. And then as time went on and her wedding was looming, he decided to kill her because, you know, she was about to get married and he wanted to be with her and he couldn't handle the rejection. Could it be that he was just super anal about the cages? I don't know. Either way, there's no excuse. It's insanity. That is what I have for you guys on this episode of HALLOWEIRD. Let me know, did you like this? Did you hate this? I hope you don't hate it because I'm doing another one on Halloween. If you did hate it, that'll be the last one. So let me know. I like to try new things from time to time. If they work, they do. If not, whatever. Oh, and before I go, I want to thank my subscribers. As always, I want to thank Scentbird for sponsoring this video. If you're interested, use my code. It saves you 30% off. Instead of $16 a month, it's $11 a month. Link in description and in the pinned comment. Check it out below. And I want to thank myself for making the video. No, I'm kidding. Okay, bye.